My name is Alara, and I'm 39 years old. After the divorce was finalized, I took my 3 daughters and moved to California. While my mother-in-law was busy doting on her son's other child, her housekeeper stepped forward and revealed a secret that left the entire family speechless. If anyone were to ask me what moment marked the beginning of the end of my 16-year marriage, I wouldn't point to the day I signed the divorce papers, nor the moment the 4 of us dragged our suitcases through the airport. I would always remember that dinner in early January. I had just placed a steaming pot roast on the table when my husband, Nathan, walked out of the bedroom. He didn't sit down as usual but stood beside his chair, his hands tightly gripping a white folder. I thought something had gone wrong with one of his construction projects. "Come eat," I said. "The soup is getting cold." Nathan didn't touch his fork. "Alara, I need to talk to you." I looked at the face of the man I had lived with for 16 years. I knew from the change in his tone that something was terribly wrong. "What is it? You look like you've seen a ghost," I joked, trying to lighten the mood. Nathan placed the folder on the table in front of me. I glanced down, and the first 3 words made my mind go blank. DNA test results. Nathan sat down, his voice raspy. "I have a son. He's 4 years old." I heard every word, but it took a few seconds for their meaning to sink in. I was still holding my fork. "Say that again." "His name is Mason. He's 4. "Whose son?" Nathan lowered his head. "Mine." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because sometimes when the pain is too great, a laugh escapes before the tears can fall. "You're telling me you have a 4-year-old son and I'm the last one to know?" "I only found out less than a year ago," he said quickly. "Less than a year?" I slammed my fork down. "So for nearly a year, you've been coming home to eat the meals I cook, calling our 3 girls to say goodnight to their father, sleeping next to me as if nothing happened?" He remained silent. That silence was more humiliating than any confession. I opened the folder. Beneath the DNA, results were photocopies of some documents. On the line for the father's name on a child's birth certificate was Nathan Bennett. I looked up. "You've already acknowledged him." Nathan nodded. I signed the voluntary acknowledgement of paternity and got it notarized. I picked up my phone and opened the banking app. For months, I had noticed small withdrawals from our joint savings account, but Nathan had always said they were for work expenses that would be reimbursed. I scrolled through the transaction history: $2,000, $1,000, $500, $3,000. There were payments to a private preschool, transfers to an apartment landlord, and deposits into the account of a woman named Isla Rose. The total was over $14,000. I pushed the phone toward him. "What is this money?" "I've been supporting her and the boy," he answered softly. "With whose money?" "Alara." "With whose money?" I demanded. He paused before saying, "Our money." I felt a hot flush of anger rise to my face. "You had an affair, had a child with someone else, and then used our joint savings to support them for almost a year. And now, you just drop a DNA test on the dinner table as a formal announcement?" Nathan buried his face in his hands. "I know I was wrong, but the child is not to blame." "Did I say the boy was to blame?" I looked straight at him. "What about your 3 daughters? Are they to blame for anything?" I married Nathan when I was 23. At the time, he was a junior engineer, and I was an accountant for a medical supply company. We saved every penny to afford the house we live in now. The year after we married, I gave birth to our first daughter, Chloe. She's 15 now, quiet, a good student, someone who keeps her feelings bottled up. 4 years later, Zoe was born. She's a chatterbox, always laughing and sometimes teasing the family so much that her father would have to say, "Can you take a break from being the MC at dinner, please?" 7 years ago, I had Ava, our youngest. She's the sweetest of the 3, the one who needs a hug from me every night before she can sleep. Only my mother-in-law, Eleanor, was never truly happy that I hadn't given her a grandson. The day Chloe was born, she managed to smile and said, "A girl for the first one is fine, just make sure the next one is a boy." When Zoe was born, her sighs outnumbered her smiles. When she came to visit us in the maternity ward, she stood by the bed and said something I've remembered for 7 years. 3 girls. I guess the Bennett name dies with Nathan. Back then, Nathan had snapped at her. "That's enough, Mom. A child is a child." That one sentence had made me trust him completely. Now, that same man sat before me, telling me he had another child, a son. "Who is this woman, Isla?" I asked. Nathan took a long drink of water, but his hand was still trembling. "She used to work in administration at my old company." "When did you meet her?" 5 years ago. My heart felt like it was being squeezed in a vice. 5 years ago, Ava was only 2. Nathan was often away at project sites, sometimes only coming home for a few days a month. I used to feel sorry for how hard he worked, even preparing meals for him to take with him. Thinking back on it, a lump formed in my throat. Seeing my silence, Nathan quickly tried to explain. It didn't last long between me and Isla. She quit her job and we lost contact. I didn't even know she was pregnant. So, nearly a year ago, she just showed up and told you the boy was yours? Nathan nodded. There was a test. He pointed to the folder. I didn't touch it again. I'm not asking about the paper, I'm asking about you. You just believed her? Nathan avoided my gaze. I had a reason to believe. What reason? He was silent for too long, and I suddenly felt there was another layer to this story that hadn't been told. From the hallway, a bedroom door creaked open. Chloe peeked out. Mom, aren't you and Dad eating? I turned around quickly. Honey, take your sisters back to your room to study. Dad and I are just talking about work. Chloe looked at me for a moment. She probably saw my red eyes, but she didn't ask. Okay. The door closed. I lowered my voice. The girls don't know anything. Don't you dare say a word in front of them. Nathan nodded. I gathered the papers and placed them neatly in front of him. Tell me everything. Don't leave out a single detail. Nathan looked at me. I spoke each word slowly. I can handle a painful truth, but I will not tolerate discovering a new lie every day. At the time Isla got pregnant, she wasn't just seeing me. I froze. Nathan clasped his hands together. She was also involved with another man. I stared at the DNA report on the table. For the first time that night, a feeling other than pain emerged inside me. Suspicion. And you still acknowledge the child is yours? I asked. Nathan replied, almost in a whisper, his voice cracking, because the results said he was my son. Outside the window, the sound of traffic continued its steady rhythm. The soup on the table had long gone cold. Our family dinner remained untouched, but I knew something had just shattered that no bowl or plate could ever catch. After he said that, I sat in silence. The more I heard, the more I realized that the truth Nathan had presented was full of holes. I pulled my chair back in. Start from the beginning. How did you meet her 5 years ago? Nathan wiped his face. Back then, I was managing a project out of town, in a neighboring state. Isla handled administration at the site office, taking care of paperwork and vehicle logs for the engineering team. So you saw each other every day? Yes. And you had an affair while I was at home raising our 3 children? Nathan looked down. I have no excuse. I gave a bitter laugh. At least that's something I can swallow. Nathan explained that at first, Isla was just a colleague. She was 7 years younger, sharp, and knew how to talk to people. One night, there was a problem at the construction site, and the team had to stay late. Afterward, Isla invited Nathan out for a late-night snack. Their conversations shifted from work to more personal topics. Did you tell her about our marriage problems? I asked. Nathan was quiet. Did you or not? Yes. So you took our private issues and used them as a way to get closer to another woman. Nathan sighed. We were arguing a lot back then. I cut him off. What couple that's been married for over a decade doesn't have their rough patches? That doesn't mean I went looking for another man. You cheated. Admit you cheated. Don't use me as an excuse. He said nothing more. Was she single at the time? I asked. Not exactly. Isla had a long-term boyfriend named Leo, a couple of years older than her. They had been together for years and had even talked about getting married, but they had an on-again, off-again relationship. Leo worked as an HVAC technician and traveled a lot. When I met Isla, she told me she had broken up with him. And you believed her. I did. I laughed. You really are a man who trusts women easily except for your wife. After a few months of growing close, Nathan and Isla crossed the line. It wasn't a one-time drunken mistake. They were involved for about 3 months. During that time, did you know that Leo was still around? I asked. Nathan hesitated. I knew immediately. You knew. You saw Leo pick her up once, and she told you they were just sorting out old issues. And you continued the affair. Nathan gave a barely perceptible nod. I only found out later that she and Leo had never completely broken up. That detail sent a chill down my spine. If Isla was still involved with Leo around the time she got pregnant, then from the very beginning, no one could have been sure who Mason's father was without a proper test. When Isla quit her job, did you know she was pregnant? No, she just texted me saying she was moving back to her hometown for a while, and then she cut off all contact. Nathan had tried calling a few times, but the number was disconnected. He eventually stopped trying. 3 years passed. Nathan changed companies. I never knew an Isla Rose had ever existed, until, nearly a year ago, she called Nathan out of the blue, saying she needed to talk about a child. They met at a coffee shop near his office. By then, Mason was over 3 years old. Nathan cleared his throat. He looks a bit like me. Like what? I asked. His forehead, his eyes. I gave a cold smile. When adults want to see a resemblance in a child, they can always find one. Isla told him that after giving birth, she hadn't wanted to drag two men into the situation, so she raised the child on her own. But as Mason grew, she became more and more convinced that Nathan was the father. Did she mention Leo? I asked. Yes. Nathan admitted that Isla had said the timing of conception was very close to when she was still seeing Leo, but she had a feeling that Mason was Nathan's son. A feeling can determine paternity now? I didn't just take her word for it, Nathan replied. That's why I agreed to the test. I looked at him. Did you go to the testing facility yourself? Nathan shook his head. Isla said she knew a place that could do it quickly and discreetly. She gave me a kit for a cheek swab and told me to do it myself and give it back to her. I questioned him step by step. Who took your sample? Isla. Did you see them take Mason's sample? No. Did you personally send both samples to the lab? No. Did you receive the results directly from the lab? Nathan was silent. Did you or not? I asked again. No, Isla brought them to me. I leaned back in my chair. I wasn't hoping the DNA test was wrong to save our marriage. The damage was already. I just couldn't comprehend how a 40-year-old man, who signed off on thick stacks of official documents every day, could handle the matter of his own bloodline so carelessly. You don't see a problem with that? At the time, I was scared you would find out, Nathan replied. I wanted to keep it quiet. I scoffed. You were so afraid of your wife finding out that you entrusted the entire process of proving a child was yours to the very woman who needed you to believe he was yours. Nathan gripped his glass. The results had the facility's name and an official seal. And a seal makes it real? He looked up, a flicker of defiance in his eyes, but he quickly shook his head. Isla had no reason to fake it. She raised the boy on her own for years. She never asked me for anything. Then why wait 3 years to show up now? I asked. Nathan didn't answer. Where was Leo during those 3 years? I don't know. You don't know, and yet you still acknowledged the child. Nathan was losing his patience. Alara, I had the test done. I shot up from my chair. No, you didn't have a test done. Nathan froze. From start to finish, you only gave your sample to Isla. How the boy's sample was collected, who took it to the lab, who received it, and who delivered the results, you were not involved in a single step. The kitchen was dead silent. I spoke more slowly. You can betray me, that's a fact. But don't call your own carelessness a certainty. Nathan slumped back into his chair, his shoulders heavy. After a long moment, he said, Regardless, the paternity papers are already filed. I stared at him. When? About 2 weeks after I got the results. Isla suggested it. She said that since we knew Mason was my son, it was only right for him to have his father's name on his birth certificate. It was only then that I understood. Isla hadn't just brought a child. She had brought a result, a story, and a clear path for Nathan to walk down. And my husband, terrified of his wife finding out and desperate to believe what he wanted to be true, had walked that path all by himself. I closed the folder. Tomorrow, I want to see the entire paternity file. Nathan frowned. What for? I want to know what you knew, and what you deliberately chose to ignore, before you signed your name to acknowledge another woman's child as your own. I stood up and carried the cold pot of soup to the kitchen. From behind me, Nathan asked softly, Alara, what if the results are real? I stopped. The child is still innocent. I turned back to look at him. But your betrayal is still real. Nathan no longer tried to find excuses. And I knew from that moment on that this was no longer a story about just 3 people. There was an ex-boyfriend named Leo, a period of time where paternity was never certain, and a DNA result where the person in control, from the sample to the final piece of paper, was Isla herself. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Nathan was still asleep on the sofa. After our talk last night, I hadn't let him into our bedroom. I didn't cry anymore. There are times when the pain is so deep that tears become a luxury. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the dining table, waiting. At 7 a.m., Nathan emerged. He looked at me, then at the file I had already placed in front of him. Get all the papers, I said. Nathan hesitated. Alara, What's the point of looking at them now? What's done is done. I want to know just how done it is. He stood still for a few seconds, then went into his office. When he returned, he was carrying a blue plastic document folder. I opened it and went through each page. A copy of Mason's original birth certificate listed only the mother's name, Isla Rose. The father's information was blank. Next to it were the documents after the amendment. Father's name, Nathan Bennett. The child's name had also been changed from Mason Rose to Mason Bennett. I stared at the 3 words, Nathan Bennett, for a long time. Not because I didn't already know, but because seeing my husband's name neatly printed on another child's official document made me realize how much further he had gone than simply discovering he had a son. When did you sign these papers? I asked. About 2 weeks after getting the DNA results. Did anyone force you? Nathan shook his head. No. Did anyone rush you to do it immediately? No. I closed the folder. So that means you had 2 weeks to think. 2 weeks to consider. 2 weeks to come home and look at your 3 daughters. To look at your wife. And you still went and legally acknowledged another child as your son without saying a word to me. Nathan sat down opposite me. I thought if Mason was really my son, I had to take responsibility. I'm not arguing against responsibility, I said, pushing the file toward him. But being responsible for one child doesn't give you the right to betray your responsibility to the 4 of us. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. I was afraid you wouldn't accept it. Of course I wouldn't accept your affair, but you were so afraid of my reaction that you chose to hide it. The more you hid it, the bigger the mistake became. He sighed wearily. At the time, Isla said it would be hard for the boy at school later if his papers didn't have a father's name. She said if I was going to acknowledge him, I should give him proper legal status. The phrase legal status made me laugh. She was worried about her son's status. Did you ever think about your wife's dignity? Nathan didn't answer. I flipped through the receipts for tuition, health insurance, clothes, and rent. There was one transfer for Isla to buy a new car, with the justification that it was more convenient for taking Mason to school. I didn't ask about the total amount. I already knew the number. I just asked, how many times have you seen the boy? He looked down. Quite a few. How many is quite a few? A few times a month. I'd take him out to play, to eat, to the doctor. One time he had a fever, and Isla called me. I felt a chill run down my spine with every word. For nearly a year, Nathan had built another life parallel to ours. It wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment, not a single piece of paper that fell out of the sky. He had spent time meeting the child, taking him to dinner, paying his school fees, buying him medicine, and completing the legal paperwork to become his father. And then, every evening, he would come home and ask me how the girls' studies were going. What does Mason call you? I asked. Nathan's reply was barely a whisper. Dad. I turned my face away. Just then, Ava ran out of the bedroom, her hair still messy, clutching a teddy bear. Daddy, are you taking me to school today? Nathan was startled. He turned to her. Yes, sweetie. Daddy will take you. Ava smiled and ran off to brush her teeth. I watched her go, then turned back to him. Did you hear that? Nathan frowned. Hear what? The same word, Dad. But one you hide in the shadows, while the other you take for granted. I love all 4 of them, he said. I shook my head. If you love them, you don't let these 3 live in a fake family. That kind of love is too cheap. Nathan's eyes reddened. What do you want me to do now? That was the first time he had asked me that since everything came out. I answered, First, don't do anything else behind my back. My conditions are, you do not bring Isla to this house. You do not take any more of our joint money, and you do not tell the children anything until we have agreed on how to approach it. Nathan nodded. And, I continued, I need time. How long? 3 weeks. He looked up. 3 weeks for what? For me to see how you handle this. Nathan fell silent. I didn't say it was 3 weeks to save our marriage because, at that moment, I didn't even know if there was anything left to save. I just wanted to see if the man I had lived with for 16 years, after his secret was exposed, would choose to stand with the truth, or once again choose the easiest path for himself. That evening, Nathan came home early. He didn't stop anywhere, and he left his phone on the table. He even offered me the password. I didn't look. If a marriage has to survive by checking a phone every hour, it's already dead, with or without a divorce decree. For the first 2 days, Nathan tried to act normal. He took Ava to school, bought Zoe a pastry, and asked Chloe about her final exams. But I noticed he often went out onto the balcony to take phone calls. On the 3rd day, I asked, Was that Isla? Nathan nodded. She was asking when I'm going to tell my mother. I froze. Your mother? Yes. Why does she need to be told right away? Nathan looked at me as if the question was absurd. Because Mom has been wanting a grandson for years. Whatever is going on between us adults, Mason is still her grandson. After hearing that, I knew the 3 weeks I had set for myself probably wouldn't feel very long. Nathan wasn't thinking about how his mother would react toward me. He was thinking about how happy she would be to finally have a grandson. That night, as I was folding laundry, Nathan stood at the bedroom door. This weekend, I'm taking you to my mom's. I looked up. For what? I want to tell her everything. Are you out of your mind? You want me to sit there and listen to your mother welcome your illegitimate child? Nathan winced. Don't call him that. It's not his fault. I'm talking about his circumstances, not scolding a child, I said, putting down a shirt. And let's be clear about one thing. I have never considered Mason to be at fault. The one at fault is standing right in front of me. Nathan stiffened. After a moment, he only said, Either way, I have to tell Mom. She's waited her whole life for a grandson. I looked at him, and an old saying came to mind. What is done in the dark will eventually be brought to the light. The only difference was that the secret in my house wasn't finding its own way out. My husband was holding it, preparing to present it to his mother as a gift. I knew then that the 3 weeks I had given myself to reevaluate my 16-year marriage were already getting shorter by the day. Because with every choice Nathan made, he was giving me an answer. On Saturday afternoon, Nathan drove me to his mother's house. During the entire drive from our home to Eleanor's, we barely spoke. I watched the traffic outside the car window, still clinging to a tiny sliver of hope. I thought that while Eleanor might be obsessed with having a grandson, she was still a woman. She had been a wife and a mother. When she found out her son had betrayed his wife for years, she would at least have to know right from wrong. I had overestimated the fairness of someone whose lifelong wish was about to come true. Eleanor's house was in an upscale neighborhood in the city. Maria, her housekeeper, smiled as she opened the front door. Oh, you two are here. Your mom's in the kitchen. She's been saying all morning how excited she was for Nathan to come for dinner. Thanks, Maria. I'll go help her, I said. Maria glanced at my face, probably sensing the tense atmosphere, and didn't ask any more questions. The dinner that day was filled with familiar dishes: roasted chicken, green bean casserole, a crisp salad, and the pot roast Nathan had loved since he was a child. Eleanor set her wine glass down and said, Eat first. Whatever's going on, we can talk about it later. You two look like you just came from a funeral. Before I could say anything, Nathan put down his fork. Mom, I have something to tell you. Eleanor looked at her son. Is the company transferring you out of state again? No. Nathan took a deep breath. I have a son. The fork in Eleanor's hand stopped halfway to her mouth. I looked at her, expecting her to yell. What did you say? She asked. Nathan repeated, I have a son. He's 4 years old. Eleanor looked at me, then back at her son. When? It happened 5 years ago. I was still waiting for her to ask why her son had cheated on his wife, but her next question was, a son? A real son? I thought I had misheard. Nathan nodded slightly. Yes. Eleanor put her fork down completely. Are you sure? Nathan opened his briefcase and took out the DNA test results and the paternity documents. See for yourself, Mom. I've already completed the legal process. She took the papers with both hands, put on her reading glasses, and read them very slowly. I sat opposite her, feeling as if I were no longer in the room. She read the name Mason Bennett, read the date of birth, and read the father's name, Nathan Bennett. She looked up, her eyes red. So it's real. Before I could process that, she shot up from her chair, grabbed the papers, and walked straight to the mantelpiece where a framed photo of my late father-in-law was displayed. Mom, Nathan called out. She didn't answer. She picked up the framed photo of her late husband with trembling hands. Oh, honey, our family finally has a grandson, she whispered softly, tracing the edge of the frame. I felt my chest tighten. She continued, You must be watching over us from heaven. For over a decade, I thought the family name would die out. I stood up. Mom. Eleanor turned around, perhaps only then remembering I was still sitting right behind her. I asked, Don't you have anything to ask your son? She frowned. Ask what? Nathan has a wife and 3 children. He had an affair and hid it for almost a year. Eleanor was silent for a few seconds before saying, He was wrong for that. I waited, but she immediately added, But it's already happened. The boy is 4 years old and he's our blood. Are we supposed to tell him he can't have a father? I never said the child shouldn't have a father, I replied. Well, that's settled then. Eleanor turned to Nathan. When are you bringing my grandson over to meet me? I stared at her, unblinking. You just heard your son confess to infidelity, and the first thing you think of is when to bring his son over? Eleanor grew irritated. Alara, I know you're in pain, but what did the child do wrong? Besides, she paused, then delivered the line that sent a chill through my entire body. For 16 years, I've waited to have a little boy running around this family again. God has finally answered my prayers. Just then, the front door opened. Chloe walked in, her backpack still on her shoulder. She usually had a study group near her grandmother's house on Saturday afternoons and would stop by for dinner before we picked her up. I had forgotten about that. Chloe stood in the doorway, her face pale. Grandma, what did you just say? No one answered. I rushed over to her. Chloe, go upstairs and put your bag away. She didn't move. She looked at her father. Dad, do you have another son? Nathan stood up. Chloe, I'll talk to you later. Is it true? Her voice was quiet, but it silenced the entire room. It took Nathan a few seconds to answer. Yes. Chloe blinked, then turned to her grandmother. So, are you happy, Grandma? Eleanor was flustered. This is adult business, you wouldn't understand. I still love you girls. Chloe didn't ask any more questions. She walked straight upstairs. I wanted to follow, but Nathan held my arm. Let her be for a minute. I yanked my arm away. From now on, don't you ever say, let it be again. You've let too many things be, and that's how we ended up here. I went upstairs. Chloe was sitting on the edge of the guest bed, her backpack still on. I took it off for her. I'm sorry, Mom. I was going to find the right time to tell you. How long have you known? She asked. 3 days. Is he really my brother? I didn't want to get into the uncertainty of the DNA test with a child. I simply replied, right now, your father believes so, and the legal documents say so. Chloe looked down. After a long moment, she asked, Mom, do girls not matter to Grandma as much as boys do? I felt a sting in my nose. I pulled her into a hug. That's not true. But Grandma said she finally has a boy in the family. That's her way of thinking, not a measure of your worth. Chloe didn't cry out loud. She just asked, if I were a boy, would Dad have done this? I couldn't answer that question. I stroked her hair. Your father's mistake has nothing to do with whether you are a boy or a girl. When adults make mistakes, they have to be responsible for what they've done. Don't take his failure and turn it into blame for yourself. When we came back downstairs, Eleanor was still holding the papers. She said to Nathan, next weekend, bring the boy and his mother here. Nathan glanced at me before replying, I'll figure it out. What's there to figure out? She snapped. He carries the Bennett name. He's my grandson. We can't just leave him out in the cold. Mom, if you want to see your grandson, I won't stop you, I said. But please remember that my 3 daughters are also your grandchildren. Eleanor looked at me. Who said they weren't? I gave a sad smile. You don't have to say it directly. The way you just held his photo and gave thanks in front of me was enough. Her face darkened. Alara, don't let your marital problems make you petty toward a child. For the first time, I didn't hold back. I'm not being petty toward Mason. The people I'm disappointed in are you and my husband. Alara, Nathan called out softly. I looked at him. Don't you dare defend anyone. The 3 weeks I gave you aren't over yet. Eleanor immediately asked, what 3 weeks? It's something for us to sort out, I said. I took Chloe's hand. We're leaving. As we reached the front porch, Maria was sweeping the steps. Seeing Chloe's sad face, she was about to ask something, but I gave a slight shake of my head. On the way home, Chloe sat silently in the back seat. Nathan kept looking at her in the rearview mirror, but didn't dare to speak. As we got close to our house, Chloe suddenly said, Dad. Yes, sweetie? Nathan answered immediately. Don't tell Zoe and Ava yet. I'm afraid Ava will cry. Nathan's hands gripped the steering wheel. I turned to look out the window. A 15-year-old girl had just been deeply hurt by the adults in her life. Yet the first thing she thought of was protecting her younger sisters. Meanwhile, the adults in that house, one had just heard about a betrayal and immediately rejoiced at finally having a grandson. That night, Eleanor called Nathan. I could hear her voice through the phone. On Sunday, bring Isla and the boy over. You two can sort out your marriage later. My grandson can't just be left out there. Nathan didn't answer right away. I sat a few feet away from him, knowing that the 3 weeks I had given my marriage were ticking away, another day lost. The following Sunday, I still took my 3 daughters to Eleanor's house. I didn't want to avoid it, and I didn't want my children to think that a new person's arrival meant we had to retreat from a place we once called their grandparents' home. Before we left, I told Nathan, "Remember what I said. No one discusses adult matters in front of the children." He nodded. When we arrived, Maria was setting up extra chairs in the living room. On the table were pastries, juice boxes for the kids, and a brand new remote-controlled car. She looked at me and said quietly, "Your mom's been preparing since this morning." About 10 minutes later, Isla arrived. She was wearing a cream-colored dress, holding the hand of a small, fair-skinned boy. "Hello, Mrs. Bennett," she said. Eleanor practically ran to the door. "Oh, here he is." Isla gently pushed the boy forward. "Say hello to Grandma." Mason mumbled, "Hello, Grandma." Eleanor's face lit up instantly. She held the boy by his shoulders and looked him up and down. He looks just like his father. This forehead is the spitting image of Nathan as a child. I stood nearby, silent. When people want to see a resemblance, even an eyebrow can become proof. Eleanor led Mason inside and handed him a new plate. "Grandma bought this just for you." Then she placed a new set of clothes, the toy car, and a savings bond on the table. Ava tugged at my hand. "Mom, on my birthday, Grandma said she had a headache." I bent down. "Don't say that here, honey." Ava's lip quivered. 2 days before her birthday, Eleanor had called to say her blood pressure was high and she couldn't come. I had even told her to rest. Yet today, she had been out shopping since the morning to welcome Mason. Zoe, standing next to her sister, was unusually quiet. During the meal, Eleanor kept piling food onto Mason's plate. "Have another piece of chicken, dear." Isla quickly intervened. "Mrs. Bennett, he can eat by himself." "What does a child know? Let Grandma take care of him." She turned to Nathan. "Bring him over on weekends. The house is big, let him run around and bring some life into it." Zoe suddenly put down her fork. "Grandma, your house has always had life in it." The table fell silent for a moment. Eleanor forced a laugh. "I meant that Mason is still little." I placed a hand on my daughter's knee under the table. After the meal, Isla offered to help Maria with the dishes. As she passed me, she said quietly, "I know this is difficult for you." I looked at her. "I have a problem with the adults who are at fault. I have no issue with the child." Isla was slightly taken aback. "I never wanted to break up your family." I gave a bitter smile. "You're about 4 years too late to be saying that." I didn't want to argue with children in the house, so I turned away. A few days later, Zoe folded up a red dress Eleanor had once given her and put it in a bag. "What are you doing?" I asked. "I'm giving it back to Grandma." "Why?" "So she can use the money to buy things for Mason." I sat down next to her. "A gift Grandma gave you is yours." Zoe looked at me. "But she loves him more." Unlike Chloe, Zoe didn't ask if she was still part of the family. She just quietly withdrew. I put my arm around her shoulder. "Just because someone else treats you unfairly doesn't mean you should believe you're not worthy of love." Zoe looked down. "I know, but I don't want to wear it anymore." I didn't press her. 3 days later, I went back to Eleanor's house to pick up an English book Zoe had left behind. Ava came with me because she got out of school early. As soon as I stepped into the living room, I froze. The wall above the sofa, where 3 framed photos of Chloe, Zoe, and Ava used to hang, was now a large blank space. In their place was a single photo of Mason standing next to Nathan. Maria was standing near the staircase with a dusting cloth. "Maria, where are the girls' pictures?" She glanced toward Eleanor. Your mom told me to put them in storage." I turned to her. "Mom, you took down your granddaughter's photos?" Eleanor answered nonchalantly. "Yes. The girls' pictures have been up for years. Now that we have a picture of the boy, it's time for a change." Ava looked up. "My picture was put away, Grandma?" "It's not lost, so don't worry. It's just in the storage room." I pulled my daughter toward me. "You have the right to hang anyone's picture in your own home, Mom. But you don't need to take down all 3 of your granddaughter's photos just to prove you love Mason." She frowned. "Here you go again. I'm just stating a simple fact." Eleanor retorted, "You couldn't give me a son. And now you're upset that I'm showing affection to my grandson." I was stunned into silence for a few seconds. Maria, standing nearby, clenched the cloth in her hand. I looked directly at my mother-in-law. "Don't you dare insult me in front of my child." "Insult you? Did I say something wrong?" "I gave birth to 3 healthy children. You have no right to speak to me as if I've committed a crime." She sneered. "The Bennett legacy needs an heir to carry the name. I finally have a grandson, and I'm not going to hide him just to spare your feelings." I heard Ava take a sharp breath. I stepped forward. A daughter is family for life, not just until she gets married. Love Mason all you want, but don't use one child's gender to put down three others. Just then, Nathan walked in through the door. Eleanor turned to him. Your wife is starting trouble over a few pictures. I looked at Nathan. See for yourself. Nathan looked up at the wall. Mom, did you really take down the girls' photos? What's the big deal? It's my grandson's picture. Is that against the law? Nathan sighed, and the words he spoke next extinguished the last flicker of hope within me. Alara, just drop it. We live so close, the neighbors will hear and think it's a huge deal. I laughed bitterly. The neighbors? You just want everyone to keep their voices down. Your daughter is standing right here, and your mother just told her she'll eventually belong to another family, and all you're worried about is what the neighbors will hear. Nathan fell silent. Ava gripped my hand tightly. I didn't argue anymore. Maria, please get me the 3 picture frames. What for? Eleanor snapped. They belong to my children. I'm taking them home. Maria went to the storage room and came back holding the 3 frames. As she handed them to me, she whispered, Alara, I'm so sorry. I shook my head. It's not your fault. But I saw a clear sense of guilt in her eyes. Maria had worked for my mother-in-law for 7 years. She had held Ava when she had a fever and driven Zoe to school in the rain. Perhaps that's why she understood how much this hurt the girls. But her position as an employee meant she could only bow her head. On the way home, Ava hugged her picture frame. She asked me, Mom, when I get married, will I not be part of Grandma's family anymore? I gripped the steering wheel. No matter where you go, you will always be my daughter, your sister's sister, and your grandparents' grandchild. Then why did Grandma say that? Because sometimes adults are wrong. That night, after the 3 girls were asleep, I opened my desk drawer. Inside was a business card for a lawyer, Teresa Vance, that a colleague had given me. The 3 weeks I had intended to use to reevaluate my marriage hadn't even passed the halfway mark, but Nathan had already given me all the answers I needed. I dialed the number. A woman's voice answered. Teresa Vance speaking. I took a deep breath. Hello, Miss Vance. My name is Alara Bennett. I'd like to inquire about divorce proceedings. On Monday morning, I took a half-day off work and went to Teresa Vance's law office downtown. Miss Vance was a few years older than me, spoke slowly but with precision. After I told her my story, she didn't ask why I had put up with it for so long, nor did she advise me to try to save the marriage or to leave it. She simply asked, Have you made your decision? I have, I replied. Then let's separate the issues. The divorce is one matter, custody is another, division of assets is a third. Don't let your anger lump everything together and make it harder on yourself. Her words brought me a sense of clarity. I had brought our marriage certificate, the girls' birth certificates, the deed to our house, and the bank statements I had saved. Miss Vance reviewed everything and said that the immediate priority was to prepare a complete file. The issues of custody and assets would be handled based on facts, not on who could shout the loudest. What if Nathan fights for custody? I asked. All 3 of your daughters are over the age of 7, so their wishes will be taken into consideration. But don't think it's as simple as them saying they want to be with you. You'll have to prove you can provide a stable environment, your housing, your job, the time you can dedicate to them. Most importantly, you need to minimize how much the children are pulled into their parents' conflict. I nodded. That was my biggest fear. I wanted to leave the marriage, not for my children to grow up feeling like they had to choose one parent and betray the other. 3 days later, I was folding Ava's clothes. I told you I would. Did you think I was just angry? I looked up. You had a year to hide your secret. I've had a few weeks to see things clearly. That's enough. Nathan came closer, lowering his voice. Alara, we've been together for 16 years. We have 3 children. Are you really going to throw it all away? I stopped folding. I'm not throwing away my children, and I'm not throwing away my life. I'm just not going to be your wife anymore. He was silent for a long time. Then he said something that made me realize the battle was just beginning. You can have a divorce, but Chloe stays with me. I thought I had misheard. What did you say? Chloe stays with me. You can take the 2 younger ones. I looked at my husband. The 3 of them have never been separated. Chloe is older. Her school is stable here. Her friends are here. She can stay in the house with me. Nothing has to change. Zoe and Ava can go with you. I understood immediately. Nathan knew that if he kept Chloe, I wouldn't be able to walk away peacefully with the other 2. He didn't need to keep all 3. He just needed to keep one to force me back to the negotiating table. Do you want to raise Chloe, or do you want to keep me? I asked. He grew angry. Stop reading into things. I'm her father. I have a right to custody. You have a right to request it, but don't use our child as an anchor to stop her mother from leaving. Nathan slammed his hand on the arm of the chair. You always think the worst of me. I looked at him. No, I'm just seeing exactly what you're doing. We didn't speak again that night, but the next afternoon, I came home from work early and heard Nathan talking to Chloe in the living room. He didn't know I was standing outside the door. Chloe, Mom and I might not be living together anymore. The girl sat in silence. Nathan continued. If that happens, I'd like you to stay with me. You can keep your school, your room, and I'll take you to your weekend classes. Nothing has to change, Chloe asked very quietly. But Mom, Zoe, and Ava? Where will they go? They'll be with your mom. She was quiet for a few seconds. When would I see them? On weekends or whenever you want. Chloe looked up. Do you really want me to stay, or do you just not want Mom to leave? Nathan froze. I froze outside the door. She continued. I've heard you and Mom arguing these past few days. I don't know what you adults are planning, but I'm not leaving Zoe and Ava. Nathan tried to keep his voice calm. I'm not asking you to leave anyone. But you're asking the three of us to live in 2 different houses. Chloe, you're older now. You have to think about your education. Chloe shook her head. I'm also thinking about my sisters. Nathan was silent. Chloe looked directly at her father. You're their dad, too. That sentence silenced the room. I walked in. Mom, Chloe said, startled. I sat down next to her. Go to your room with your sisters. She looked at me, then at her father. Do I have to tell someone who I choose, Mom? I shook my head. Not now. This is for the adults to resolve. It's not your job to pick a side. But if someone asks you, just tell them what you truly want, not what I want, and not what your father wants. Chloe nodded and went upstairs. The moment the door closed, Nathan turned to me. Were you eavesdropping? I walked into my own home and heard my husband trying to drag our child into our divorce. I don't need to eavesdrop. I was just asking her preference. No, you were offering her a bribe. Stay, and you get to keep your school, your room, your friends. A 15-year-old hearing that will think that if she goes with her mother, she's the one giving all that up. Where did I say anything wrong? Nathan argued. It's the truth. I'm not stopping you from expressing your desire for custody, but you are not allowed to turn stability into bait. Nathan stood up. So you leave, and you're certain you'll get all 3? I never said I was certain. You're their father, too. You have a job, a house, an income. If we have to fight, I will fight to the end. I looked at the man in front of me. For the first time in days, I didn't feel angry. I just felt sad. Do you know what the scariest part is? You once said you loved all 4 children, but whenever it comes time to make a choice, you use one of them as a tool. I'm not using her. Then don't make Chloe bear the responsibility of keeping her mother here. Nathan gritted his teeth. I won't just let you call all the shots. This isn't about winning or losing, I said. If you genuinely want to raise the children, then prove you can take care of them. I'll do the same. Nathan gave a cold smile. Fine, let the court decide. I nodded. Fine. That night, I called Miss Vance. After listening, she simply said, don't argue in front of the children anymore. From now on, prepare your documentation. Job, income, housing, and the children's daily schedules. The calmer you are, the better. I understand, I replied. Before hanging up, she asked, Are you scared? I glanced toward the girl's bedroom. A sliver of light was still visible under the door. Of course I'm scared, I paused. But what I'm most scared of isn't losing a legal battle. I'm scared my 3 girls will think that because their parents are splitting up, they have to split up too. That night, Nathan slept in the guest room. I lay in bed between Zoe and Ava, with Chloe on the other side. None of them asked any more questions. But when I turned off the light, Chloe quietly reached over and took her sister's hand. I looked at their hands in the darkness and understood one thing very clearly. If the adults had broken the home, the least they could do was not force the children to divide the remaining pieces themselves. After Nathan's declaration to let the court decide, I stopped arguing with him. I knew that from that point on, debating who was right or wrong in our living room was pointless. I needed to prove my ability to care for our 3 daughters, not just stand before a judge and recount how my husband had hurt me. Following Teresa's guidance, I began to compile everything: my employment contract, pay stubs, work schedule, and letters from the school confirming that I was the parent who regularly handled drop-offs, pickups, and parent-teacher conferences. I gathered Ava's medical records from her bouts of bronchitis, most of which bore my signature. I even wrote down the daily schedules for all 3 girls. Chloe had her core classes in the morning and 2 after-school club meetings a week. Zoe had soccer practice on Tuesday and Thursday evenings. Ava was still young and needed to be picked up from school before 5 p.m. When Nathan saw me organizing papers at the table, he asked, "Are you trying to prove I don't take care of them?" "No," I replied. "I'm proving that I have been and can continue to care for them. I care for them too." "I'm not denying that." Nathan fell silent. That was one thing I tried to maintain from the start. I didn't want to paint him as a deadbeat dad just to win. He had taken them to school, stayed up nights when Ava had a fever, and taught Chloe how to ride a bike. But his job required frequent travel. Sometimes he'd be on site for 10 days or even 2 weeks. If he demanded custody of all 3, he would have to answer a very practical question. Who would care for them when he wasn't there? One afternoon, Teresa called me to her office. "Alara," she said, "regarding the children, you need to prepare all 3 of them mentally. Because they are all over 7, their opinions will be considered. But you must not, under any circumstances, coach them on what to say." "I wouldn't want to," I nodded. "Even if a child says they want to be with their mother, it's not just about the mother's financial condition. The court looks at the entire picture. And if the siblings are close, separating them is something that is carefully weighed." Hearing that gave me a small sense of relief. That evening, I didn't line up my 3 daughters to ask them who they would choose. I waited for private moments with each of them. First was Chloe. She was folding her laundry when I sat down on her bed. "Chloe, I'm only going to ask you this once. If, down the line, someone asks you who you want to live with, don't look at my face for an answer. Just say what you feel." She looked up. "I know. Say what you truly want." Chloe was quiet for a moment, then said, "I want to live with you, but I still want to see Dad." I nodded. "That's your right. And I want to be with my sisters." "Okay." She looked at me. "Would you hate me if I still loved Dad?" Her question pierced my heart. "No. Your father being wrong to me is between him and me. Your relationship with your father is yours." Chloe looked down and continued folding her shirt, but I saw her shoulders relax. Zoe was different. I asked her while we were washing vegetables in the kitchen. "If Mom and Dad live separately, where would you want to live?" "With you," she answered immediately. "Why?" She paused for a few seconds. "I don't want to live at Grandma's house." I stopped what I was doing. "I'm not asking you about Grandma, but I'm afraid she'll say again that only boys can carry on the family legacy." I washed my hands and turned to her. "Don't choose where to live just because you're angry about something Grandma said." Zoe looked at me seriously. "I'm not angry anymore. I just don't want to hear that every day." I didn't press her further. Ava was the last one I asked, while I was brushing her hair. "If Mom and Dad live in 2 different houses, where would you want to be?" Ava thought for a long time, then asked, "Will the 3 of us be together? Is that what you want?" "Yes, and I want to visit Dad." I kissed the top of her head. That was all a 7-year-old could think of. No assets, no right or wrong, just a plea not to be separated from her sisters. In the subsequent legal meetings, Nathan remained adamant that he had sufficient income and a stable home. I didn't argue. Teresa simply asked a practical question. If Mr. Bennett has to be on site for a project for 7 to 10 days, who will handle drop-offs and pickups for 3 children? "My mother can help," Nathan replied. I looked at him. Teresa continued. "Is Mrs. Bennett currently the primary caregiver for any of the children on a daily basis?" Nathan froze. He knew the answer. His mother had never been responsible for the girls' daily lives. "I can request a change in my work assignments," he said. Teresa nodded. "If you can do that, it's an option. But we have to look at the current conditions, not just projections." After that meeting, on the way home, Nathan suddenly asked, "Do you really want to take all 3 of them away from me?" I turned to him. "I never said that. But if they live with you, what do I have left?" Hearing that, I realized he viewed custody as a division of assets. "They aren't property. Them living with me doesn't mean you lose your right to be their father." Nathan didn't say any more. About 2 weeks later, his attitude began to change. Perhaps he, too, was looking at his own work schedule. One evening, having just returned from a project in a neighboring state, he saw me helping Ava with her math homework. Zoe was working on her language arts homework at the next table, and Chloe was waiting for me to sign her school planner. He stood at the door for a long time. After the children were asleep, Nathan said, "I agree to let all 3 of them live with you." I didn't celebrate. I just asked, "Are you sure?" "I don't want the sisters to be separated." That was the most decent thing I had heard from him in weeks. I replied, "You can still visit them, call them, and be involved in their schooling. I won't take away your right to be their father. Nathan nodded. The custody issue was finally resolved. But there was still the matter of assets. The house we were living in was appraised at around $560,000. Nathan wanted to keep it because it was close to his work and a place the girls could visit him. I agreed, on the condition that my share of the value was paid out clearly. The money Nathan had taken from our joint account without my consent was also calculated as part of the assets he had already received. Nathan looked at the final number and asked, "You're not asking for anything more?" "I'm asking for what's mine." "I thought you would use the affair as leverage." "I'm getting a divorce, not trying to get rich." Nathan lowered his head. We agreed on a monthly child support amount and how to handle major expenses like tuition and medical bills. I insisted everything be in writing. Not because I wanted to turn family into a contract, but because I had lived for too long with the phrase, "I'll handle it." I understood that some things are less painful later if they are made clear from the beginning. The evening after we signed the preliminary agreement, Nathan sat alone in the living room. I poured him a glass of water and said, "There's one more thing you need to know." He looked up. "What is it?" "My parents in California offered for me and the kids to move in with them." The color drained from Nathan's face. I continued, "I have decided to take them up on that offer." Nathan shot up from his seat. "You're planning to take the girls across the country?" I looked him straight in the eye. "I'm not leaving tomorrow. But if all the paperwork is finalized, it's an option I'm seriously considering." Nathan stared at me as if he finally understood that this divorce wasn't just about a wife moving into another room. It could move the entire life he thought would always be within his reach to the other side of the country. Nathan stood in the middle of the living room, staring at me as if he'd heard something even more terrifying than the divorce itself. "How long have you been planning this?" "I haven't been planning it." "So, while you were living with me, you were already preparing a way out to California?" I knew exactly what he was thinking. I pulled out a chair and sat down. "My parents moved to California many years ago. They have always wanted us to be closer. It's not like I ran out and planned this last week just because I was angry with you." Nathan's face tensed. "Then why didn't I know it was at this stage?" "I told you about it before. You were the one who said we'd wait however many years it took because you didn't want to leave your job here." Nathan fell silent. It was true. Years ago, when my father told us he was settling down out west, Nathan had been very clear. He was used to life here, and we would figure it out when the time came. We went on with our lives, had our children, and worked. We were settled here, so the whole matter was pushed to a distant corner of our minds. It was only a few months ago that my parents mentioned it again, offering their empty house since my dad retired. "Now that my marital status has changed, I need family support," I explained. "I haven't bought tickets, and I'm not saying I'm leaving next week." "What about the children?" he asked immediately. "If you move away, I still want to take all three of them." "No." I looked at him. "You just agreed to give me primary custody." "I agreed for them to live with you in this city, not for you to take them to the other side of the country." Nathan's voice rose. I remained calm. "Let's be clear. I'm not sneaking them away. You have the right to know, to voice your opinion, and I will follow the proper procedures for any documents that require your consent." He paced back and forth. "How am I supposed to see them?" "Phone calls, video chats. If you want to visit, I won't stop you. When conditions permit, the children can come back to visit you." "You make it sound so easy." I looked at the man before me. "Nothing about this is easy. I'll also be leaving a familiar job and environment to start over." Nathan didn't agree right away. We spent weeks discussing it, at times so tense that I thought our previous agreements would fall apart. I didn't use the fact that the children wanted to be with me as a weapon, nor did I say he had no right to an opinion because he had an affair. He was wrong to me, but he was still their father. Finally, after consulting with his own lawyer about the necessary paperwork and the mechanisms for staying in touch with the girls, Nathan agreed to sign what was required. Before he did, he asked, "Do you promise not to cut me out of their lives?" "I promise what is within my power to control," I replied. "But how their feelings for you evolve over time is something you will have to maintain yourself." Nathan looked at me for a long time before signing. I thought that would be the end of it. But the news reached Eleanor. I don't know how, but Isla found out. One afternoon, she sat beside Eleanor, peeling an apple, and said, "Mrs. Bennett, you may think Alara will let the girls see Nathan, but once they're all the way in California, calling or visiting won't be so easy." At that point, Isla wasn't officially living in Eleanor's house, but she spoke with an intimacy that had grown over time. "She wouldn't dare stop Nathan from seeing his children, would she?" Eleanor asked. Isla quickly waved her hand. Oh, I'm not saying she would, I'm just worried. Think about it, the 3 girls go to school there for a few years, get used to life there. When they come back, will they even consider this place home anymore? It was a comment disguised as concern, but it struck at the heart of Eleanor's deepest fears. From that day on, my phone started ringing nonstop. An aunt called. Alara, if a marriage doesn't work out, that's one thing, but why are you taking all the children away? Auntie, who told you I was taking the children away and not letting their father see them? I replied. Well, your mother-in-law has been crying her eyes out. Another relative scolded me. That family has 3 grandchildren, and you're just sweeping them all off to the West Coast. What will their grandmother have left? I was too exhausted to even bother correcting them. The tipping point came when one of Nathan's cousins posted on social media. My name wasn't mentioned, but anyone who knew the situation understood who it was about. Some people get divorced, take their share of the assets, and then prepare to take all the children out of state. The father and grandmother will probably have to ask for permission just to see them. Below, someone commented, a woman angry at her husband shouldn't use her children for revenge. My hands turned cold. Chloe accidentally saw the post and showed me her phone. Mom, are they talking about you? I turned off the screen. I'll handle this. Chloe was so angry her face turned red. I want to comment. No, but they're lying. Being angry doesn't mean you have to jump into an adult argument. I called Teresa. After hearing what happened, she told me to screenshot everything, the post, the comments, the time it was posted, and the accounts involved. Don't engage online, she advised. We'll send a formal request for them to stop spreading false information and issue a correction. If it continues to damage your reputation, we'll take the next step. I did exactly as she said. I also sent a single message to Nathan's family group chat. The terms of our divorce, the division of assets, custody, and the plan for the children to move out of state are all documented in a clear, signed agreement. I did not take more than my share of the assets, nor am I preventing Nathan from contacting his children. Anyone who continues to spread lies that I took money or am kidnapping the children will be held responsible for their words. I didn't add another word. I didn't mention Nathan's affair, didn't drag Isla into it, and didn't bring up Eleanor's favoritism online. 2 days later, the post was deleted. After receiving the formal request from my lawyer, the cousin posted a brief retraction, stating that the previous information was incomplete and may have caused a misunderstanding. Eleanor called me that night. You're playing hardball with your own family now? Mom, I'm not playing hardball, I replied. I'm simply asking people not to say things that aren't true. It's just family talking amongst themselves. Do you have to bring lawyers into it? Since the day I married into this family, I have held my tongue many times for the sake of family. But family, more than anyone, should not be slandering each other. She was silent for a moment, then said, When you go to California, you'll have your 3 girls. What about their grandmother? I have never denied that you are their grandmother, I replied. Then you have to let them come back and visit. When it's appropriate, I will discuss it with their father, but please, don't turn affection into a form of ownership. Eleanor hung up. It was the first time I felt she was beginning to realize that the daughter-in-law who used to stay quiet to keep the peace was gone. Nearly 2 months later, I received the final notification. The last procedures were complete, and the transfer of the girls' school records had been completed. I only bought the plane tickets after I had the documents in my hand. The day I found out our departure date, my father called from California, his voice full of excitement. Just get over here. If things are tough, the whole family will start over together. I laughed. I'm almost 40 and I'm coming back home to mooch off my parents. My dad chuckled. 40 or 60, you're still my kid. If the house is too small, we'll add another bed. What's the big deal? For the first time in months, I laughed for real. The morning we went to the airport, I was pulling 3 large suitcases, and each of the girls had a backpack. Nathan was already there waiting. I looked around but didn't see Eleanor. Nathan, understanding my glance, said quietly, Mom didn't come. I knew it. She's taking Mason to look at a preschool. I didn't ask any more questions. I just took Ava's hand and walked toward my ex-husband, who was waiting for his biological children in the middle of the crowded airport terminal. Some people only realize what they have when they're about to lose it. Others, even in the final moments, are still busy looking in another direction. That morning, in front of the security checkpoint, Nathan hugged Ava longer than usual. She, being the most sentimental one, threw her arms around his neck as soon as he bent down. Daddy, remember to call me, okay? Nathan's voice was hoarse. Okay, when you get there, you have to listen to Mom and your grandparents. Ava nodded, her eyes welling up. Zoe stood beside them, her lips pressed tightly together. Nathan patted her head. She didn't flinch, but she didn't immediately hug him either. It wasn't until he said, "I'm sorry, Zoe," that she stepped forward and gave him a quick hug. Chloe was the last one. Nathan looked at his eldest daughter for a long time, then opened his arms. Chloe didn't step into the hug. She just said, "Take care of yourself, Dad." I saw Nathan's face fall, but he didn't force it. "You too." I stood a few steps away, my hand on my suitcase handle. I felt no satisfaction, no sense of victory. Adults can sign a paper and turn their backs, but children have to carry the memories of both parents with them. I just said to Nathan, "I'll message you when we land." He nodded. "Thank you." That was the last thing we said to each other before the four of us walked through the security gate. Ava looked back 3 times. The third time, I didn't look at Nathan anymore. I looked at my 3 daughters. They were the direction I needed to go. The long flight was exhausting. When we landed in California, Ava was asleep on her sister's shoulder. Chloe looked around the massive terminal with a tense expression. My parents were waiting for us just outside the gate. As soon as my mother saw us, she ran over and hugged each of the girls. My father looked at our 3 suitcases and said, "Is that all? I thought you guys were packing everything but the kitchen sink." Zoe laughed. "Grandpa, you came to the airport to pick us up just to tease us?" My father's eyes widened. I haven't used that phrase in years. Did it sound right? For the first time in months, we all laughed together. But the new life was not as easy as a single laugh at the airport. My parents' house was a small home in a quiet, sunny neighborhood in San Diego. They had cleared out their home office to make a bedroom for Chloe, while I shared a room with Zoe and Ava for the time being. In the second week, the real difficulties began to surface. Chloe missed her friends and became even quieter. One day, I found her sitting on the porch for a long time, reading messages from her old friends' group chat. That evening I asked, "Do you miss home?" Chloe replied, "I don't know which place to call home anymore." Her words were a punch to the gut. I sat down next to her. "You don't have to have an answer right away. Wherever you have people who love you, that's a place where you can feel at peace." Chloe leaned her head on my shoulder. "If you miss your dad, call him." She hesitated. "Won't you be sad?" "Why would I be sad that you miss your father?" I handed her my phone. "Your dad was wrong to me, but that doesn't mean I expect you to erase him from your life." Zoe could handle the academics well, but when she heard the local kids talking with their fast West Coast slang, she would freeze. On her first day back from school, she threw her backpack on a chair and groaned, "Mom, they talk like they're swallowing half their words. I hear the beginning and miss the end." My father, sitting nearby, chuckled. "Tomorrow, just ask them to speak slowly." Zoe looked at him. "Grandpa, you talk even slower than I do." "Well then, we can improve together." Ava, in her own way, provided comic relief. She learned a local greeting at school but kept mispronouncing it. Every night, she would make my father play the role of her teacher so she could practice. One time, she said a word so wrong that the whole family burst out laughing. Ava put her hands on her hips. "I'm trying to fit in, don't ruin my vibe." My mother and I exchanged wide-eyed glances, 7 years old and already talking about vibes. Those small moments of laughter helped lighten the heavy atmosphere in the house. I started working again. Through a friend of my father's, I found an accounting position at a local family-owned real estate firm. It wasn't exactly what I used to do, and the salary wasn't what I hoped for, but it was enough for me to start providing for my family without depending entirely on my parents. I left early and came home late. My mother helped with picking up Ava. My father took Zoe to her soccer practices, and Chloe took the school bus by herself. It wasn't a glamorous life, but we all shared the load. Every Sunday evening, if the girls wanted to, I let them video call Nathan. He was usually sitting in our old house. One time, as soon as Ava saw him, she asked, "Dad, are you eating dinner alone?" Zoe chimed in, "Dad, don't just eat takeout and frozen dinners all the time. Your hair will fall out." Nathan laughed. "My daughter is talking to me like I'm an old man." Chloe was the quietest, sometimes just sitting next to her sisters and listening to them talk. I didn't push her. A broken bond couldn't be forced back together with a single phone call. As for what was happening back east after we left, I was completely unaware at the time. It was only much later that Maria recounted the events to me, piece by piece. About 2 months after we left, Isla showed up at Eleanor's house with a sad expression. She said the landlord of her current apartment needed the place back to sell it. "So where will you two go?" Eleanor asked. Isla looked down. "I'm looking for another place. The ones I can afford are too far from Mason's school. and the ones that are close are too expensive. Hearing this, Eleanor immediately said, "This house has 3 floors. It's just me and Maria here. Bring Mason and stay here for a while." Isla put on a show of refusal. "I couldn't impose like that, Mrs. Bennet." Eleanor waved her hand. "What's there to impose? Sooner or later, you're family." She even corrected herself. "From now on, don't call me Mrs. Bennet, just call me Mom." Isla paused for a few seconds, then said softly, "Yes, Mom." Before long, the room my 3 daughters used whenever they stayed at their grandmother's was renovated. The 3 small beds were moved to the storage room, the old bookshelf was cleared out, and the walls were decorated with car-themed alphabet decals and a new toy shelf. Maria was the one who carried the old backpacks belonging to Chloe, Zoe, and Ava downstairs. She told me that as she held Ava's yellow backpack, she stood outside the storage room for a long time, remembering how the little girl used to run into the house, drop her bag, and yell, "Maria, I'm hungry." Isla walked by and saw her standing there. "Old things that aren't being used should be stored away, Maria. It makes the room feel more spacious for a child." Maria didn't reply. She just placed the 3 backpacks neatly together. Mason was treated like a prince by Eleanor. In the morning, she'd ask him what he wanted to eat, and in the evening, she'd sit and watch him play in the living room. Isla also played her part well. She went grocery shopping with Maria, remembered the times for Eleanor's blood pressure medication, and occasionally gave her shoulder massages. The house began to take on the shape of a new family. Just as Eleanor started to believe that everything was finally falling into the place she had always wanted, the doorbell rang one early winter afternoon. Maria went to open the front door. Outside stood a man in his early 30s, his jacket covered in dust from the road. He looked inside and asked, "Excuse me, do Isla Rose and a boy named Mason live here?" Before Maria could answer, Isla walked out from inside the house. The moment she saw the man, the color drained from her face. The stranger just stood on the porch and said in a low voice, "I just want to know if the boy is okay." The man standing outside showed no intention of causing trouble. He just looked into the yard where Mason was sitting on a new ride-on toy and asked again, "Is the boy okay, miss?" Before Maria could answer, Isla rushed out. "Leo," she hissed, her voice low but clear enough for Maria to hear. The man looked at Isla. "So you finally decided to acknowledge me." Isla pulled the door partially shut. "What are you doing here? I thought we were done." "I'm not here for you," the man replied, his eyes fixed on the gap in the door. "I'm here for the boy." Isla's expression changed instantly. "Don't talk nonsense. I just want to know the truth." Isla stepped completely outside and turned back to Maria. "Go inside, Maria." Sensing it wasn't her place, Maria turned to go, but the door wasn't fully closed. From the hallway, she could still overhear their conversation. "It's been 5 years, Isla," the man said. "You can't keep me from the truth forever." "I told you back then, the child isn't yours," Isla said in a hushed tone. "That's what you said, but there was never a test. Stop meddling in my and my son's life." "I'm not meddling. I just want an answer." Then Isla's voice dropped, and Maria couldn't hear any more. About 10 minutes later, the man left. Isla walked back into the house, her expression back to normal. She saw Maria cleaning the table and stopped in front of her. "Maria." "Yes?" "That man was just an old acquaintance. It has nothing to do with Mom." Maria looked at her. "I didn't ask." Isla gave a faint smile. "Well, I'm just telling you. Mom is older, and her blood pressure isn't stable. If something isn't your business, don't get involved. It's better to keep small matters from turning into big ones." The words were soft, but the threat was clear. Maria had worked in Eleanor's house for 7 years. She knew her place. People hired her to cook, clean, and manage the house, not to be a judge in their family affairs. She just replied, "I understand." But that evening, as she was clearing the dinner table, she looked at Mason sitting on Eleanor's lap watching cartoons and couldn't forget the man's words. "You can't keep me from the truth forever." She didn't tell anyone, partly because she was afraid of being labeled a troublemaker, and partly because she didn't know if the man was telling the truth or was just a jilted ex-lover. Nearly 2 weeks passed. Eleanor was still happily doting on her grandson, and Isla showed no signs of anything unusual. Until one morning, Eleanor went for a routine checkup, and Isla went to the supermarket. Maria was home alone when the doorbell rang again. It was the same man, but this time he was dressed more neatly and was holding a small envelope. Maria opened the door a crack. "Are you here for Miss Isla again?" "Yes, but if she's not home, I'd like to have a word with you." "Whatever it is, you should wait for her to come back." "My name is Leo," he said quickly. Maria fell silent. Leo continued. I used to be with Isla. When she got pregnant with Mason, we hadn't completely broken up. Maria was startled. Why are you telling me this? I just work here. I know, and I don't want to drag you into this. Leo looked into the yard and said slowly. But I saw you taking care of the boy the other day. I thought you at least wouldn't want him to grow up in a lie. Maria frowned. Do you have proof that he's your son? Leo shook his head. No. His answer surprised her. If Leo was here to cause trouble, he probably would have claimed to be the father outright. Instead, he was admitting he wasn't sure. Leo explained that 5 years ago, he and Isla had been in a long but tumultuous relationship. They had argued constantly about marriage and their careers, breaking up and getting back together several times. During their last phase, Leo discovered that Isla was involved with a married man. They had a huge fight. Shortly after, Isla announced she was pregnant but insisted the child wasn't Leo's. I was angry and proud back then, Leo said with a sad smile. She said it wasn't mine, so what could I do? I left. Looking back now, I was a coward. So why are you looking for her now, after 5 years? Maria asked. I heard from an old friend that when Isla was pregnant, even she wasn't sure. I only recently found out the boy is now carrying that other man's last name. He paused. I'm not here to take the child. I just want to do a proper test. Miss Isla won't agree. No. I've tried to meet with her 3 times. The first 2 times, she avoided me. I eventually paid an investigator to track down where she was staying, but when I showed up here the last time, she threw me out. Maria was still cautious. What do you want me to do? Leo took a business card from the envelope. Please keep this for me. If Isla changes her mind, or if anyone in this house wants to know the truth, just call this number. Maria didn't take it right away. Mr. Bennett already has a DNA test. Leo looked at her. I don't know who did that test. That's why I want to do one now, with all parties present. If Mason isn't my son, I will walk away and never come back. His words made Maria hesitate. Finally, she took the business card. You should go. I can't promise I'll say anything. You don't have to promise. Leo nodded respectfully. Just please don't throw away my number. After he left, Maria stood at the door for a long time. Then she took the card inside and tucked it into a box of old medicine in her drawer. That afternoon, Isla came home, completely unaware that Leo had returned. Maria didn't say a word, but from that day on, she started paying closer attention. One evening, after Eleanor and Mason had gone upstairs, Maria was collecting laundry from the balcony when she heard Isla on the phone in the living room. Her voice was very low. I told you not to come here anymore. Maria stopped. She couldn't hear what the person on the other end was saying. The boy's life is stable now, Isla replied. Don't mess it up. A moment later, her voice grew sharper. I know you want a test, but it's not necessary. Do you understand? It's not necessary. Maria was about to go inside when she heard one more sentence. This house. They're planning for the boy's future with this house. If you show up now, you'll ruin everything. Maria's hand, holding one of Mason's small shirts, froze. For the first time, the man at the door was no longer just an old flame in her eyes. His presence now touched on 2 other words, this house. She didn't know what house Isla was referring to, and she didn't dare to speculate. But why would a woman with a stable life, who supposedly had nothing to hide, be so afraid of a DNA test? That night, Maria locked her drawer and lay in bed, unable to sleep. On one hand was the job that had supported her for 7 years. On the other was the feeling that something was being hidden under the very roof she cleaned every day. She told herself that without proof, she couldn't make accusations. But from that night on, Leo's business card was no longer just a meaningless piece of paper. After overhearing that phone call, Maria began to see Isla in a new light. It wasn't hatred, nor was it a firm conclusion that she was a fraud. Maria just observed, and the more she observed, the more she realized how clever Isla was. She never once asked Eleanor for money. In the morning, Isla would remember Eleanor's blood pressure medication even before Maria did. Eat breakfast first, Mom, don't take it on an empty stomach. Eleanor would smile. You're so young, but your memory is better than mine. I'm just trying to be helpful while I'm staying in your home, Isla would reply softly. One day, Maria came back late from the grocery store to find that Isla had already prepared dinner, even making an extra soup. The first bite Eleanor took earned a compliment. It's rare to find a young woman today who can cook like this. Isla smiled. I just want to make sure you're taken care of, Mom. You've done so much for us, it's the least I can do. Hearing this, Eleanor was even more pleased. Maria, standing nearby, remained silent. Isla didn't need to speak ill of me anymore. She just had to be everything I wasn't, a defiant daughter-in-law who dared to get a divorce and take her children out of state. One evening, after Mason was asleep, Isla was giving Eleanor a shoulder massage. She let out a sigh. "What's wrong?" Eleanor asked. "It's nothing, Mom. If something is on your mind, just say it." Isla was quiet for a moment before replying. "I was just thinking that when Mason grows up, he'll still have the stigma of being an illegitimate child. Even with a father who has acknowledged him, people will talk." Eleanor turned around. "Who would dare say that about my grandson?" Isla gave a sad smile. "You say that because you love him. But to outsiders, it will still look like my son and I are just living off your charity." Eleanor's face immediately tensed. "This is my house. Who has the right to say anything? I'm not worried about myself. I'm just worried about the boy." Isla stroked Mason's hair as he slept beside them. "A child needs to know where his real home is, Mom." Maria, who was folding laundry in the hallway, heard this, and her hands stopped. The phrase, "his real home," sounded like a hook, not pulling hard, just lodging itself in the right place. Eleanor immediately said, "If my only grandson doesn't have a home, then who does?" Isla quickly waved her hands. "I wouldn't dare to think about your house, Mom." It was that very sentence that sent a chill down Maria's spine. Because people who truly aren't thinking about something don't usually feel the need to announce that they aren't thinking about it. A few days later, Eleanor took out her recent bank statements and started calculating. The 3-story house she lived in was her own separate property, an inheritance from her parents years ago. The deed was in her name alone. Besides the house, which a real estate agent had estimated was worth around $1.8 million, she had nearly $120,000 in savings. In the past, she had told her 3 granddaughters that when she got old, she would leave a portion to whichever of them took care of her. But since Mason's arrival, that story had changed. One afternoon, she told Nathan, "I'm thinking of buying a place for Mason." Nathan was surprised. "Why? Isla is living here. How long can she stay here? Who knows if you'll marry her or not? I want the boy to have something of his own." "Mom, you should keep that money for your retirement," Nathan said. Eleanor waved him off. "You can't take money with you when you die." Nathan wasn't enthusiastic, but his mother had made up her mind. Right on cue, Isla found a small condo near Mason's school, mentioning she was just looking because she couldn't afford it. Eleanor asked the price. "Over $150,000, Isla said. "How could I ever afford that?" "I'll help with the down payment," Eleanor declared. Isla feigned shock perfectly. "Oh no, Mom, I couldn't." "Why not? It's my money for my retirement, I can't accept it." The more she refused, the more Eleanor insisted. "If you won't accept it for yourself, accept it for Mason." A few days later, she transferred $65,000 directly into Isla's account. The transfer description read, "Gift for Mason's condo down payment." Maria found out when Eleanor asked her to fetch her glasses so she could double-check the account information. Maria stood there, stunned. $65,000. This wasn't a carton of milk or a silver bracelet anymore. She thought of the business card in her drawer, of Leo's words, "I just want to test." And she remembered Isla's voice on the phone. They're planning for the boy's future with this house. She started to feel she could no longer pretend not to know. But it didn't stop there. About a week later, Eleanor invited an acquaintance who worked in real estate over for coffee. As Maria brought out the drinks, she heard Eleanor ask, "If I want to put a portion of my house into a trust for my grandson, how would I do that?" "How old is he?" the person asked. 4. For a minor, it involves a legal guardian. It depends on how you want to structure it. I'd need to see the specific documents. Isla, sitting nearby, immediately interjected. "Mom, please stop. I told you I don't need anything." "You don't need it, but my grandson does," Eleanor snapped. Isla lowered her head and said nothing more. On the surface, she appeared completely selfless, which only strengthened Eleanor's resolve. That evening, Maria ran into Isla in the hallway. Isla was holding a stack of papers. "What's that?" Maria asked. Isla immediately closed the folder. "A private matter." Maria caught a glimpse of a photocopied property deed at the top. Before she could ask, Isla smiled. "Just focus on helping Mom with the housework. The family papers will be handled by family." The words, "by family," stung Maria. She had been here for 7 years. When my daughters had fevers, she had stayed up with them. When Eleanor had headaches, she was the one who ran to buy medicine. Yet, in just a few months, Isla had drawn a clear line. Maria didn't argue. She just said, "I'm here to do my job, not argue with you." Isla probably thought that meant she had been intimidated. But that night, Maria took Leo's business card out and placed it on her table. She stared at the phone number for a long time. One call could make everything explode. If she didn't call, Eleanor might continue to hand over her assets based on a lie. She picked up her phone, then put it down again. Without proof, she was afraid of being the one to destroy a family. An old saying goes, "Don't bite the hand that feeds you." Eleanor paid her salary and gave her a stable job for years. But if you see someone about to walk off a cliff and stay silent, is that still considered gratitude? The next morning, Eleanor announced at breakfast, "Next week is Thanksgiving. I'm going to invite the whole family over." "Like every year, Mom?" Nathan asked. "Yes, and I want to take the opportunity to announce my decision about the house." Isla flinched slightly. "What decision?" Eleanor smiled. "My plan to leave a portion to Mason. I'll announce it in front of everyone so there are no questions later." The spoon in Maria's hand clattered softly into a pot. "What's wrong?" Eleanor asked. Maria quickly bent down. "My hand slipped." Isla shot her a look quick, but sharp enough to convey a warning. Thanksgiving was just over a week away. Leo's business card was still in the drawer, and on Eleanor's desk, the file related to the house was now neatly placed in a red folder. For the first time, Maria realized that her silence was also a choice. And if it was the wrong one, it could cost someone not just a few $1,000s, but a lifetime of savings. Thanksgiving Day fell on a cool, crisp Thursday. By 6 a.m., the lights in Eleanor's house were already on. Maria was up early, roasting a turkey, baking casseroles, and preparing the cranberry sauce. In previous years, on Thanksgiving, my 3 girls would be running up and down the stairs. Chloe would help set the table, Zoe would fight to peel the potatoes, and Ava would trail behind Maria, begging for a taste of food. That year, none of them were there. Instead, Mason, wearing a new white button-down shirt, was led from table to table by Eleanor. "My grandson," she would announce. Every time someone praised the boy's bright looks, her smile grew wider. Isla was also dressed modestly, helping to serve food while reminding Mason to greet the adults respectfully. A relative even remarked, "That Isla seems like a decent girl." Eleanor just smiled at the comment. Nathan arrived a little later. He brought a pie and stood before his father's photo on the mantelpiece for a long time. Maria said his expression was more somber than in previous years, probably because his 3 daughters were half a country away. "Nathan, come here," Eleanor called. "Let Mason help set the table for our family dinner." Nathan hesitated. "He's only 4, Mom. What does he know?" "If he doesn't know, we teach him." She took Mason's hand and guided him to place the nice napkins. "This is your grandson, taking his proper place in the family." Maria, who was placing a basket of dinner rolls on the table, felt a fire burning in her stomach. Leo's business card was still in her drawer, and the property file was in the red folder on the living room cabinet. When the food was ready, everyone sat down to eat. The house was filled with the clatter of silverware and chatter. Someone asked how my children and I were doing in California. Eleanor just replied, "They're out west now, so their other grandparents are taking care of them." Then she turned and gave Mason a piece of turkey. A cousin laughed awkwardly. "You seem thrilled, Eleanor." "Of course I am. We finally have a boy to carry on the Bennett name," she replied. Nathan put down his fork. "Mom, it's Thanksgiving. Let's not make this a boy versus girl thing today." "I'm just stating a fact," she retorted. Isla quickly intervened. "Mom, let's just eat. We have guests." After the meal, everyone moved to the living room for coffee. Eleanor told Maria to bring out the freshly brewed pot, and then she personally retrieved the red folder. Seeing it, Maria nearly dropped the tray of mugs. Eleanor sat in the middle of the room and said cheerfully, "Since everyone is here, I'd like to take this opportunity to talk about something." Nathan looked at the folder. "What are you planning to say, Mom?" "It's about the house." A cousin gave a nervous laugh. "You're still so healthy, Eleanor. Why talk about this so soon?" Eleanor waved her hand. "It's better to say it while I'm still clear-headed, so there are no questions later." She opened the file. "This house was an inheritance from my parents, my separate property. I plan to leave a portion to Nathan and put another portion into a trust for Mason." Her words made several people, who were in the middle of pouring coffee, stop. Discussing inheritance on Thanksgiving was something typically avoided unless absolutely necessary. A few people exchanged glances. Isla immediately put down her mug. "Mom, I told you not to do this." "Why not? Chloe, Zoe, and Ava are your granddaughters too. If you do this, people will think I pushed you to." Eleanor immediately came to her defense. Let them think what they want. The three girls have their parents to look after them, and they'll have their own families someday. Mason is a Bennett. He needs a place to come back to. Nathan frowned. Mom, let's discuss this later. Later when? I'm 66, not 16. Isla gently tugged at her arm. Mom, please don't say any more. Eleanor didn't listen. Tomorrow, I have an appointment to review the papers. I'm just telling everyone today so you all know. Just then, Maria came in from the kitchen with a plate of dessert. She heard the word, tomorrow. If she stayed silent today, the paperwork could move one step further tomorrow. She remembered Chloe studying at the kitchen table, remembered Zoe running to the kitchen whenever she was sad, remembered Ava hugging her and asking, Maria, when you're old, will you live with me? For 7 years, she had watched those three girls grow up. Now, their pictures were in a storage room, and the woman who had warned her not to meddle was sitting next to a property file. She put the dessert plate down. Ma'am. Eleanor turned. What is it? Please don't sign those papers yet. The entire living room fell silent. Eleanor frowned. What papers? The papers to give the house to the boy. Isla spun around. Maria! The two words were sharp, a clear reminder of her previous warning. Eleanor grew irritated. This is my family's business. What are you interfering for? Maria's face flushed. I may be an employee, but I have a conscience. Then keep it to yourself and mind your own business. She didn't move. But if I don't speak up today, I won't be able to live with myself later. Nathan looked up. What's going on, Maria? Isla shot up from her seat. It's nothing, Nathan. She probably just heard some gossip. Maria looked at Isla. Her hands were trembling, but her voice was clear. A man has come to this house twice. Who? Eleanor asked. His name is Leo. The mug in Isla's hand clinked against the saucer. Nathan stared at her. Leo? Maria nodded. He said he used to be with Miss Isla. He didn't come for money or to cause trouble. Stop it! Isla shouted. Maria flinched but didn't back down. He only said one thing. Eleanor's face began to pale. What was it? Maria looked around the room full of relatives and said each word distinctly. He said that Mason might be his son. No one spoke. It was as if Eleanor couldn't comprehend what she was hearing. Leo wants to do a DNA test. He said that around the time Miss Isla got pregnant, they were still involved. Eleanor's hand trembled. The mug slipped from her grasp and shattered on the hardwood floor. Mason, who was playing at her feet, jumped and looked up. Isla lunged forward. Do you know you can be held responsible for slandering someone? Maria turned pale but replied, I didn't say the boy is definitely his son. I'm only saying that someone came here and asked to clarify the matter. How many times? Nathan stood up. Twice here. He said he had tried to find Miss Isla before that. Nathan turned to Isla. Is this true? Isla didn't answer immediately. That small hesitation was enough to change Nathan's entire expression. Eleanor gripped the edge of the table. Isla, say something. Isla took a deep breath, the panicked look on her face vanishing. Yes, Leo is my ex-boyfriend. Eleanor gasped. Isla continued. But he is not Mason's father. How can you be so sure? Nathan asked. Isla turned to look at him, her eyes welling up but her voice steady. Have you forgotten? She pointed directly at the file next to Eleanor. We have a DNA test. The room, which had been on the verge of exploding, fell into a different kind of silence. Because against the words of a caretaker and an ex-boyfriend, Isla still held the one piece of paper that had made Nathan Bennett himself sign his name and acknowledge Mason as his son. After Isla's declaration, we have a DNA test, the room was pulled back from the brink. Eleanor clung to that piece of paper like a drowning person to a life raft. That's right. We have the DNA test. What more is there to say? She turned on Maria, her voice trembling with anger. You hear a few words from a stranger and you cause chaos at our family Thanksgiving. Don't make accusations without proof. Maria's face went white. I was only asking you to wait before signing the papers. I never said for certain that Mason was Leo's son. Isla stood next to Eleanor, her eyes red. Within minutes, she had composed herself. Leo is indeed my ex. At that time, we hadn't completely broken up. I never denied that to Nathan. Nathan looked at her. You never told me he was still trying to find Mason. Because I knew you would overthink it. So what if he came here twice? An old ex who can't accept that I've moved on. Was I supposed to report every visit to you? Eleanor jumped in. Nathan, it's here in black and white. If Isla and her mother were trying to trick us, why would they have dared to do a DNA test? Isla turned to her, letting a single tear fall perfectly. I didn't want Thanksgiving to turn into this. If my being here is causing trouble, I'll take Mason and leave. Eleanor immediately grabbed her hand. Where would you go? No one is telling you to leave. She then turned to Maria. Show me your proof. Maria took a deep breath. I have Leo's phone number. That's it? He came here. I'm telling the truth. Isla sneered. You're using a business card to question my and my son's honor in front of the entire family? Maria went into her room. When she returned, she was holding the card she had kept for weeks. She placed it in front of Nathan. He gave me this. He said he just wants a definitive test. If it's not his son, he will never show up again. Nathan stared at the name Leo for a long time. Isla stepped closer. Nathan, are you really going to believe a stranger over the results we already have? Nathan looked up. I haven't said I believe anyone. Then why are you holding that number? Because I want to know why you hid it. Nathan's voice was low, but it was enough to make Isla freeze. The relatives began to get up and leave, with only a few close family members remaining. Mason, not understanding anything, sat hugging his toy car, occasionally asking, Mommy, when are we going home? Isla bent down and hugged him. Just a minute, sweetie. Nathan looked at the child, his expression complicated. For nearly a year, Mason had called him Dad. The new suspicion couldn't erase that memory. That evening, after most of the relatives had left, Nathan stepped out onto the porch and called the number on the card. The person on the other end answered after 3 rings. Hello? This is Nathan Bennett. There was a pause, then Leo replied. I knew you would call. Nathan gripped the phone. You came to my mother's house. I did. You said Mason might be your son. That's right. Based on what? Leo was direct. Based on the timeline of when Isla and I were still together. But I didn't say for sure. I just want to test. Why didn't you do it 4 years ago? Nathan asked. Because I was a fool. The answer silenced Nathan. Leo continued. Isla told me the baby wasn't mine. I was angry, proud, and about to leave for a job far away. I believed what I wanted to believe and walked away. Hearing that, Nathan's grip tightened. Perhaps he realized they had both chosen to believe what was most convenient for them. If the test comes back and he's not your son, then what? Nathan asked. I will disappear from the boy's life. And if he is your son? Leo was quiet for a moment. Then I will have to take responsibility for the part I missed. Nathan hung up after arranging to meet in person the next day. When he went back inside, Isla was waiting in the living room. You called him. You don't trust me. Nathan looked at her. I'm asking you one last time. Why didn't you tell me Leo was looking for his son? Isla started to cry. Because I was scared. You were suspicious from the beginning. Now that our lives are finally stable, I didn't want an old ex to show up and ruin everything. Ruin what? My son's family. Nathan gave a dry laugh. What family? Isla was stunned. You acknowledged Mason as your son. Your mother loves him. I just wanted things to be stable. Then let's do another test, Nathan said. The color drained from Isla's face. No, was all she said. Eleanor, sitting beside her, looked up sharply. Why not? Nathan asked. Because I will not accept having my son dragged off for a test every time someone shows up claiming to be his father. Leo isn't just someone. You just admitted you were with him at the time you got pregnant. But we have the results. So what are you afraid of if we do it again? Isla shot up from her seat. You're insulting me. Nathan stood up too. I'm demanding clarity on something that will affect this boy for the rest of his life. Isla picked up Mason and turned to Eleanor. Mom, I'm sorry, but I can't stay here anymore. What are you doing? Eleanor said, panicked. If even Nathan thinks I brought a child of unknown paternity here to deceive this family, what dignity do I have left if I stay? Eleanor grabbed her arm. I never said I didn't believe you. Nathan didn't stop her. He just said, you can leave, but the test must be done. Isla turned back, her eyes blazing. You'll regret this. Then she took Mason upstairs to pack. Eleanor turned to her son. Don't you think you're being too harsh? We still have the old DNA test. That's exactly why I want to do it again, Nathan replied. The next morning, Isla left with Mason. She didn't tell Nathan where she was going, only texting that she would talk when she had calmed down. Eleanor paced the living room, muttering complaints about her son, but her hands quietly tucked the property file back into a cabinet. Nathan saw her. You're not going ahead with the house papers, Mom? She avoided his gaze. Let's wait until things are clear. It was the first time Eleanor had placed something else above her sole heir. That afternoon, Nathan met with a lawyer. He brought Mason's current birth certificate, the paternity acknowledgement, and the old DNA result. After hearing the whole story, the lawyer said, "You are legally recognized as the child's father. Now that you suspect you aren't biologically related, you can't just do another test and declare the matter closed." "What if the new result shows he's not my son?" Nathan asked. "That would be crucial evidence, but now that there's a dispute, you need to follow the proper legal procedure to petition the court to redetermine paternity. Keep the original DNA test. If you suspect its authenticity, that can be investigated later." Nathan sat in silence. A year ago, he had chosen the most discreet path because he was afraid of me finding out. This time, there were no shortcuts. He walked out of the lawyer's office and texted Isla, "I am filing a legal petition to disestablish paternity. If the old result was correct, this all ends." The message was marked as "read," but there was no reply. That evening, the red folder with the house papers was gone from the table. The old DNA test was still there, but for the first time, the person who had once believed in it absolutely now looked at it with the eyes of someone who was no longer sure he knew the truth. After Nathan's text, Isla was silent for 3 days. On the 4th day, she finally replied, "Do what you want. I will not consent to my child being dragged around for tests over and over again." Nathan didn't reply. He began the legal process, just as his lawyer advised. The events that followed were not things I witnessed. It was only months later, when Nathan recounted them to me, that I learned there were nights he barely slept, just sitting and staring at Mason's birth certificate and the old DNA test. Perhaps for the first time, he understood how one signature, made too easily, could set so much in motion. Isla contested the petition to disestablish paternity. She argued that Mason had all the proper legal documents and that Nathan had voluntarily acknowledged him. To question it now, based on the word of an ex-boyfriend, was an insult to her and her son. Nathan's lawyer didn't argue with emotion. They demanded clarification based on evidence. Leo also agreed to cooperate. The process didn't unfold in a few days like in the movies. There were documents to file, hearings to schedule, and at one point, Isla requested a postponement because Mason was sick. Eleanor was the most anxious of all. Every day, she would ask Nathan, "When will we have the results?" "I don't know yet, Mom," he would say. She would pull out the old DNA test. "Maybe we should just drop it. This one is perfectly clear." Nathan looked at his mother. "If you believe that completely, why did you put away the house papers?" Eleanor was speechless. Maria told me that from that day on, she rarely mentioned her only grandson. One afternoon, she went down to the storage room herself to look for something. There, she saw the 3 framed photos of Chloe, Zoe, and Ava, carefully wrapped in plastic by Maria. She picked up a photo of Chloe at age 10, dusted it off, and asked Maria, "Have these been down here long?" "Since the day you told me to put them away," Maria replied. Eleanor was silent for a long time, but she still put the photo back down. At that moment, she wasn't yet brave enough to admit she was wrong. Nearly a month later, the DNA samples were collected again, this time under a strict, independent protocol. Nathan didn't give his sample to Isla. No one took anything home. All parties had their identities verified, samples were taken, and everything was meticulously documented. Nathan told me that as the technician took the cheek swab, he could only think of one small thing. A year ago, in his desire for secrecy, he had skipped all the steps that he now saw were essential. Mason was young and didn't understand what the adults were doing. He just asked, "Daddy, will this hurt?" Nathan froze. The boy was still calling him Dad. He bent down and said, "No, it won't hurt, buddy." It was the first time Nathan told me that part of the story with a crack in his voice. When the results were ready, Nathan didn't open them right away. He sat in his car for nearly 10 minutes, the envelope on the passenger seat. Finally, he tore it open. The conclusion was short. No paternal genetic relationship exists between Nathan Bennett and Mason Bennett. Nathan read it 3 times. He called his lawyer first, then his mother. As soon as Eleanor heard, she yelled, "That's impossible." "I'm holding the results, Mom," Nathan said. "Maybe they made a mistake." Nathan let out a bitter laugh. "Mom, a year ago, you said the other one couldn't be wrong either." She fell silent. That night, Nathan went to his mother's house. Eleanor was sitting in the living room, her eyes red and swollen. "So, Mason really isn't your son?" Nathan placed the results in front of her. "No." She stared at the paper but didn't dare to pick it up. After a moment, she asked, "Then whose son is he?" "I'm not sure yet," Nathan replied. But that answer only lasted for a short time. Leo proactively completed his own test with Mason after the necessary procedures were followed. This time, the results confirmed that Leo was, in fact, the boy's biological father. Nathan told me that when he read that second result, he wasn't angry anymore. He just felt empty. The man he had seen as a troublemaker was the real father. And he, the man who had taken the boy to school, bought him medicine when he was sick, given him his last name, and heard him call him Dad for nearly a year, had no biological connection to him at all. But the story wasn't over. The lawyer asked Nathan a question. If the new result confirms you are not the father, then where did the old DNA test come from? Nathan brought the original copy to the office. The paper had the name of a testing facility, a case number, and a seal. The lawyer sent a formal inquiry to verify its authenticity. A few days later, the facility replied, requesting more information. Then the official response came. The case number printed on the paper did not exist in their system. No test samples under the names Nathan Bennett and Mason Rose corresponded to the date on the document. Most importantly, they confirmed that the result Nathan provided was not a document issued by their facility. Nathan's hands went cold as he read it. He immediately called Isla. The first call went unanswered. The second was rejected. The third time, Nathan texted, "The old DNA test was not issued by the facility on the paper. Explain yourself." Nearly an hour later, Isla replied, "I don't know. I had someone else handle it." "Who?" Nathan texted back. No answer. "Who did you give my sample to?" Still silence. "You used that paper to make me acknowledge Mason as my son," he wrote. Isla hung up on him. At this point, the story was no longer about a woman who was mistaken about her child's father, nor was it about an old love triangle. Nathan took all the documents, the old DNA test, the new results, the paternity papers, and the verification letter from the testing facility to his lawyer. He was advised to keep the originals, not to make any edits, and not to speculate about who forged them. Instead, he was to provide all materials to the authorities to investigate their origin and purpose. "Now that I'm not the biological father, can I just have my name removed from the birth certificate?" Nathan asked. The lawyer shook his head. "It's not that simple. A legal parent-child relationship has been established. To change it, you need a court order based on clear evidence." Nathan sat in silence. A year ago, he thought a single DNA test was enough to add his name to a child's life. Now, he was learning that to correct a mistake, it wasn't as simple as tearing up a piece of paper. When the news reached Eleanor, she sat motionless for a long time, then said to Maria, "So Mason is really someone else's son?" Maria didn't answer. She just looked at the living room wall, where the photos of her 3 granddaughters once hung, now replaced by a photo of Mason. Suddenly, Eleanor stood up and walked straight to the storage room. This time, she brought the 3 old frames back up. But just as she placed them on the table, Nathan's phone buzzed. It was a message from Isla, sent to the family group chat. It wasn't an apology or an explanation. It was a series of screenshots of old text messages between her and Nathan, from before the first DNA test. Below them, Isla wrote just one sentence. "Nathan, don't play the victim. You knew from the very beginning that Mason might not be your son." The screenshots Isla sent to the family group chat silenced the room. Nathan opened each image. The messages were nearly a year old. In one, Isla had written, "I'm telling you now, Leo and I weren't completely over at that time." Nathan had replied, "I know, but if the baby is mine, and he's a boy, my mom would be so happy." Another exchange was even more telling. Isla had asked, "What if the test comes back and he's not your son?" Nathan's response, "Then I'll pretend I never knew. I just don't want to make a scene and have Alara find out." Eleanor read that, and her face flushed with anger. She turned to her son. "You knew?" Nathan sat motionless. "I'm asking you, you knew he might not be your son?" "I knew she was still seeing Leo at the time," Nathan answered slowly. "Then why did you still acknowledge him?" "Because the DNA test came back positive afterward." Eleanor slammed her hand on the table. "But you knew from the very beginning that there was another possibility." Nathan didn't argue. Isla sent another long message. "Nathan, you can say I deceived you with the paper, but don't act like you were completely innocent. You knew the timing was ambiguous, and you chose to give me the sample instead of going to the lab yourself because you were scared of Alara finding out and because you wanted a son. You wanted to believe that result even more than I wanted you to believe it." Nathan read it and didn't reply. A A relative immediately called Eleanor. What's going on? Did Nathan know all along? Eleanor hung up and looked at her son. I thought Isla set this trap all by herself. Turns out you walked right into it. Nathan looked up. I didn't know the paper was fake. But you knew about the other man. Nathan was silent. Eleanor laughed bitterly. You used to say, a child is a child. Now, just hearing the word son makes your eyes light up. That was the exact phrase Nathan had said to his mother over a decade ago. Now, it came back to him like a slap in the face. Nathan went back to his own house. That night, he sat alone in the dark living room, dozens of unread messages on his phone. He told me later that it was the first time he didn't know who to be angrier at, Isla for the fake DNA test, his mother for her favoritism, or himself for seeing the red flags from the start and walking past them anyway. Around midnight his time, my phone rang. It was morning in California. I was packing my lunch for work when I saw Nathan's name. Thinking it might be about the children, I answered. Hello? The other end was silent for a few seconds. Alara, is something wrong with the girls? No, the girls are fine. Then why are you calling? Nathan took a heavy breath. Mason isn't my son. My hand, holding the lid of a Tupperware container, froze. It was the first time Nathan had told me the result himself. I just asked, and? Nathan was taken aback. He probably expected me to be shocked, gloat, or say, you got what you deserved. Leo is the biological father, he said. I heard. You knew? Maria messaged me to check on the kids and mentioned it briefly. Nathan was silent again. After a moment, he said, the old DNA test was also fake. It wasn't issued by the facility on the paper. I put the container down. Then you need to work with your lawyer and the authorities. I am, but I wanted to tell you. His voice dropped. I was wrong. I leaned against the kitchen counter. Wrong about what? He didn't answer right away. If you're just calling to say you were wrong to trust a fake DNA test, you don't need to tell me. No, his voice cracked. I was wrong before that. I waited. I knew Isla was still involved with Leo when she got pregnant, he said. I thought that if the test came back positive, at least Mom would finally have her grandson. I closed my eyes. He had finally said it out loud. So, you wanted him to be your son. Yes. You wanted it so much that you ignored the sloppy way the test was handled. Yes, he answered quietly. You wanted it so much that you could come home, look at your 3 daughters, and still feel like something was missing? There was no sound from the other end. I didn't need him to answer. Nathan, you may be the victim of a fraudulent document, but don't use that to paint yourself as an innocent party in this whole story. I know. I didn't know before. No, you didn't, I said, my voice slow and deliberate. No one forced you to cheat on your wife. No one forced you to take our joint savings to support another family. No one forced you to stand by silently while your mother took down our daughter's photos. And no one forced you to use Chloe as a bargaining chip to keep me from leaving. His voice was choked with emotion. I'm sorry. I hear you. Who are you trying to make things right with? The children. I looked through the window. Out in the yard, Ava was waiting for the school bus, and Zoe had just run out to give her a water bottle she had forgotten. If the girls give you the chance, you can try to fix your relationship with them. As for me, we're over. Nathan was silent for a long time. Is there no other way? No. I didn't say it with anger. The calmness in my voice probably made him understand more clearly than any shouting ever could. When I was still waiting for you to stand up for your wife and children, you chose silence. When I was still in that house, you chose to save face with the neighbors. When I filed for divorce, you chose to hold Chloe back. Chances aren't infinite. Nathan sighed. I understand. You're only just beginning to understand, I replied. He didn't beg anymore. Before hanging up, he asked, Can I call the girls on Sunday night? I'll ask them. Thank you. I put the phone down. I just felt a sense of relief, as if the person who had caused me so much pain had finally called his mistakes by their proper names. Back in his world, Nathan had to face other consequences. Isla had moved into a temporary place after leaving Eleanor's. Once the paternity was settled, Leo began to make arrangements to take responsibility for his son. As for Eleanor, she was completely devastated. She hadn't just lost her dream of a grandson, she had realized her own son had overlooked so much in pursuit of that dream. But she didn't change overnight. On the contrary, the shock made her old habits resurface even more fiercely. One afternoon, Isla returned to the house to get the rest of Mason's things. The boy ran into the living room, and as soon as he saw Eleanor, he shouted, Grandma! Eleanor froze. Mason ran toward her. about to hug her leg, but she stepped back. Isla's face turned pale. Mom? Don't call me Mom, Eleanor yelled. Mason looked confused, his hand still reaching for her. Aren't you going to pick me up, Grandma? Maria ran out from the kitchen. Eleanor looked at the child she had once doted on, and her anger erupted. He's not my grandson, so get him out of here. And don't you ever step foot in this house again. Mason stood there, stunned. He was only 4. He didn't know what DNA was. He didn't understand how the adults had deceived one another. He only understood one thing. The grandmother who used to hold him in her arms suddenly didn't want him near her anymore. Maria watched the scene, her eyes red with tears. And in that moment, it became clear that Eleanor still hadn't understood her biggest mistake. After my call with Nathan, I thought the worst of the pain was over. But that evening, Maria sent me a long message. She told me Isla had come back for Mason's things, and when the boy saw Eleanor, he ran to her, but she recoiled and told him to leave and never come back. My hands went cold as I read it. I didn't feel sympathy for Isla, but Mason was only 4. He didn't forge the DNA test, he didn't ask for a house, and he certainly didn't understand the adults' battles. The next morning, I called Eleanor. It was the first time in months I had initiated a call with my former mother-in-law. She answered quickly. Alara? Yes, it's me. The moment she heard my voice, she started to cry. Alara, I was wrong. I was so wrong to you and to the girls. Mom, I said, I didn't call to hear you apologize. She stopped crying. Then why did you call? I called because of Mason. The line went silent. After a moment, she said, He's not my grandson. I closed my eyes. That's exactly what I wanted to talk about. Mom, did Mason fake the DNA test? No. Did he ask you to give his mother money? No. Did he demand a share of your house? She didn't answer. He's only 4 years old, I continued. Before, you saw my 3 daughters as less because they were girls. Now, you see a child as unworthy of love because he doesn't share your blood. As long as you keep switching from love to hate based on a test result, you haven't understood where you went wrong. Eleanor was crying again. But when I look at him, all I can think of is how his mother deceived me. Isla is the one who deceived you, not the child. It was a long time before a voice came from the other end. I know. I didn't offer forgiveness, nor did I promise the girls would call her right away. Some wounds can't be healed with a single phone call. After that, things were sorted out legally. Eleanor wanted to reclaim everything she had given Mason. Her lawyer was blunt. Discovering the biological truth didn't automatically turn every gift she had voluntarily given her grandson into a case of fraud. In the end, they focused only on the large documented transactions. The $65,000 she had transferred to Isla for the condo down payment became the subject of a civil dispute. The plan to give Mason a share of the house had never been finalized, so it was dropped. The fake DNA test continued to be investigated. The fallout was enough to turn Isla's life upside down. The condo purchase fell through, and she lost her standing in Eleanor's home. The same people who had once praised her for being decent now avoided her. But I felt no satisfaction when I thought of Mason. After being confirmed as the biological father, Leo didn't become an overnight hero either. He admitted his own past cowardice, how he had walked away out of pride when Isla told him the child wasn't his. He didn't try to take Mason from his mother for revenge. He simply began to take responsibility for his son, step by step, following the proper procedures. Once, Mason asked him, "Who are you?" Leo knelt down to his level. "I'm the one who was a little late." Maria told me that story. It was a bittersweet moment. In this whole affair, every child had paid a price for the choices of adults. So had Nathan. After his apology, he never mentioned getting back together. The first Sunday I asked the girls, "Dad wants to video call. If any of you don't want to, you don't have to." Ava agreed immediately. Zoe thought for a moment, then nodded. Chloe shook her head. I didn't force her. Nathan only asked about school and what they were eating. He listened to Ava talk about her new teacher and Zoe complain about a hard math problem. He didn't ask when they were coming back to him. 3 weeks later, Chloe said, "This Sunday, I'll join the call." "Are you sure?" I asked. "I haven't forgiven him." "That's okay." She looked at me. "But I still want a dad." I pulled her down to sit with me. "You don't have to choose between love and anger. There are people we can still love, even while they have to be held responsible for what they did." From then on, Nathan slowly reappeared in the girls' lives. Every bit of closeness had to be rebuilt from scratch. That was the price he paid. As for Eleanor, after our call, she went down to the storage room, brought up the 3 old photos, and hung them back on the wall. But that didn't mean I was booking flights back to visit right away. She started writing letters, one for each of the girls. In her letter to Chloe, she apologized for making her feel she was less valuable because she was a girl. To Zoe, she apologized for the words that made her want to reject her gifts. To Ava, she wrote, "No matter where you go or who you marry, you will always be my grandchild." She didn't send money or jewelry. She didn't mention the house. Chloe read her letter and folded it up. "I haven't forgotten, Mom. No one is asking you to." Nearly a year after we moved to California, our new life finally found its rhythm. Chloe had a group of friends at school. Zoe adapted to the West Coast slang more confidently. Ava stopped asking why Grandma preferred boys. One evening, we were having dinner when Ava suddenly asked, "Mom, if you had a baby brother for us back then, would you and Dad still have gotten a divorce?" The table went quiet. I put my fork down. "Our family didn't break up because I didn't have a son." "Then why?" "Because someone didn't know how to value what was right in front of him." Chloe said softly, "Grandma lost 3 granddaughters because she wanted 1 grandson." I shook my head. "Not exactly. She didn't lose you because she wanted a grandson. She lost a piece of your love because she let that desire turn into favoritism and injustice. I had to go through a 16-year marriage to understand that a family doesn't break just because of a third person. Sometimes, the door is already left open by selfishness, prejudice, and the things people deliberately refuse to see." Isla created a lie, but Nathan and Eleanor gave that lie a place to live because they desperately wanted to believe in a son, an heir. In the end, Isla lost her standing and faced legal battles. Nathan lost his marriage and had to rebuild his relationship with his children from the ground up. Eleanor still had her house and her money, but she had to live with the fact that the 3 granddaughters who once adored her now kept their distance. That was the price that couldn't be measured in dollars. Loving your children and grandchildren should never be about weighing them on a scale of boy versus girl, or shared blood versus not. And it should certainly never be about letting pride, assets, or toxic favoritism cause pain to the people who are truly and sincerely by your side.